like my phone's blowing up, but I don't work right now, so it's like I work at night, so I'm just like I can't talk to you. The joys of having like 3-ish jobs. But like I don't know. I mean, I've always had like jobs, and I feel like I don't know. I'm really drawn to it. I'm just gonna set this down for a second while I get my background together. There's, I had, like Parker and Ariel were like, well, we don't want to, but like I guess we could. And I asked them like a couple of days ago to say I'm helping them with their document thing or their webinars, which is so great. I'm so excited. Oh, yeah. Let me tell David. Yeah, it's not hard. Hi, David. and welcome to the Intern Breakroom at Nonviolence International, New York. My name is Nicole, and I am a civil society liaison.
I'm Aidan, and I am a video journalist.
And today, you may have noticed that it is just the two of us in our lonesome little box, but it's totally fine because I have no idea what Aidan's working on these days, and I never get to ask him. But to start off, before we create like greater unity between the two of us, I do want to ask a general question. Aidan, do you know what today is?
I do not know what today is.
Well, I have my planner over here, and it tells me that today is International Youth Day.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. Youth, they're great, and they get a day, and it's today. Um, so yeah, so I just kind of, even though everybody's like really hard at work right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that is why it's just the two of us. We are in like the throes of like research and webinars and all kinds of stuff. So all of our interns, they're hard at work, and we're like, "Do you guys want a break?" And they're like, "No, we can't take a break." Like actually, literally, that is the conversation that
Yep.
I've had with several people in the last few days because like they're just really working hard.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so that's really great. Um, and but I did want to make sure that we met up today because I wanted to let everybody know about the initiatives, and I'm gonna internally between the interns, I'm gonna let everyone know about things they can do for International Youth Day. And there's like a big Twitter thing because Twitter is important, despite all of my anger at it existing at all. But no, it's great. It's very interesting, and good things come from Twitter. So it's very exciting, and there are lots of good things that we can do on Twitter today. So I did write them down, and I did get
Okay.
emails about them.
Hmm.
But I guess before I feel like I'm monopolizing a lot of the conversation. Uh,
You have a lot of
let's see.
pre-prepared stuff.
I do. I have like too much pre-prepared because we're supposed to be like kind of this is supposed to be the break room and we're chilling and we're talking. So let's chill and talk for like a hot second.
Okay.
Um, and then I'll get to like my structured programming. So Aidan, so what are you working on right now? Or do you have like, a lot of things that are wrapping up?
So I'm working on a number of things. Obviously, we do this, and then I've been helping out with webinars that are upcoming. So that's that. I guess that's just Parker's and Ariel's that are upcoming on the 19th and the 26th, I think.
Mm.
But I'm just doing tech support for those. Right now, like the project that I'm working on is like this video I've been working on for forever. It's about like Jojo Rabbit, uh, the film about like the young Nazi. Do you know it?
So I have not seen it, but I remember they had a showing when we were in the resource center
Yes,
back
yeah,
in the day, in the
yeah.
before times.
Um, and so basically, like it follows like this. I don't even know. He's like 12 or something. This 12-year-old in like Nazi Germany, um, and it's very interesting. But the thing that I'm doing is I'm analyzing the ways in which it tells us about like how people are converted to fascist ideas, uh,
Wow.
and I'm doing it in connection. This part's really cool with the story of this real guy whose name is Christian Picciolini. Have you heard of him?
Okay. No?
Uh,
Maybe? Who is he?
he's an ex neo-Nazi in the real world who he started like a number of foundations where he's like trying to intervene with like people being radicalized. Um, and so like
Oh, wow.
I read his book, and I'm just trying to like look at like the different risk factors for like how people become radicalized like that. Um, that's the project I'm currently working on. Like I finished the draft of it like way months ago, but then like the protests happened, and I wanted to work on a different project relating to more closely relating to that, which
Mm.
is it's like this. I've told you about this a little bit before, but it's basically uh, taking a lot of the arguments that people have against like BLM and all of that,
Mm.
and refuting them, and then also like trying to really work in like the ways we've talked about, like discussing things with empathy and listening to people, and like the ways to really convince people aren't just to like throw arguments at them. It's really to like you have to understand the arguments you're going to make, but you really have to listen and talk with them. So trying to like meld all of that together. but that part's
I'm
waiting on review from someone. So
I may like, well, maybe I'll send this to you, but I was just reading this article and it was like breaking down like, it was like a dialogue article, and it was really helpful, because I am about to like, I gotta call my dad is what I need to do. I think I was thinking that not to say that like, I don't know, I guess this is political, but anyway, so he's like I just was like really internalizing and not rejecting and pretending like it's not real the fact that like he is a Trump guy.
right.
And I've been like, no, not my dad. It's just he voted for Trump, but like he's not like a Trump guy.
Right.
Like, no, of course he is. Like, so like now I'm like trying to take full responsibility for that, and for like for my harmonious family and like doing all that stuff. So I'm okay. I gotta do this. What do I do? Because I so desperately want to be like fact, 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 and like that's not how you do it. So.
Though I do think it is important to like know those facts.
Yes, 100%. Because then you can kind of lead them to like information, but like you have to kind of, and like I think we've talked about this before, where it's basically like having complete faith that that person, like whoever that you're talking to, they can, like understand what you're talking about, and then also that you can learn from them, and then like even if the thing that you learn is just kind of like how they're navigating the topic. So you kind of have to figure out like what's really important to them first. But like I'm still really struggling with that like first step. But we'll work on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end it's just a process of, asking like good faith questions and trying to understand. And I think people mostly want to be understood, So
everyone is just crying out for like to be seen and heard, I
mean, like there are people who will shut down when you ask them questions, but I don't know. I think most people are very open to talking about themselves and their beliefs.
That's what I mean. I think like that's why it's so important to like have like, I don't know, like a way to like just decide that you're going to respect the person, like no matter what. Because I think that the reason why people shut down if you're asking questions is because they're like, they don't have faith that in you as like, it's like, and have established like good faith where they will think that you'll actually hear what they say,
right.
So if you're like, I will actually listen to you, people will be like, oh, okay, I can actually, it depends, right? Everyone's like on the spectrum of like, believing in other people. But yeah, I think you have to like, as honest as you can, like offer that, like, I will actually, like, I really will listen to you. And I'm not going to try to like, shut you down or like use this, and we do that like in relationships, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm going to, bring this up later. It's like, no, don't do that. Don't weaponize anything.
Right. No, exactly. How about you? What have you been working on?
Oh my gosh, like 4 billion things. So, I mean, the larger project of like what I'm doing as a civil society liaison is I'm trying to find ways to connect all these different organizations. I applied for us to host a like an intergenerational youth dialogue workshop with the SDG Action Zone. So I submitted that like last week. They were due. So hopefully we get approved to do that, and we can like reach out to all of our networks and say, come to the SDG Action Zone and talk to young people. And if you're young, talk to older people. It'll be great. But it's like mainly them doing the talking, right? So it's like I have like a one-on-one. So I had to design this whole thing and like incorporate a couple of like published things about partnership that came out earlier this year for the goals. So so hopefully people will learn how to break their silos and incorporate young people into the core of their partnership for the goals. Yay!
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. So hopefully that happens. I don't know when I'm going to find out if our workshop got selected, but I will let you know, Aidan, and I will tell the world, and I will tell all of our partners and go out onto a mountain and invite millions of people.
I can't wait.
So I did that. And then I think this brings me to the next thing that I have, which is International Youth Day activities. So I am an analog person, so I do things on my planner. So I do have some information. There is a Twitter march, hashtag Twitter march.
What is a Twitter march?
So here's what we're gonna do. So we didn't you'll have to like check it out post like after this time and see how it went, because it was at 10 a.m. Which was like right before we were getting the DC webinar stuff settled.
Right.
But essentially what happened is, so a bunch of young people logged into Twitter at 10 a.m. This morning, and they did at SFCG, and they answered, and so they were asked like a question, and then like everybody put in their responses, and they hashtagged it with hashtag Twitter March, hashtag Youth for Peace, and that's youth with the number 4 peace. And you know, at SFCG, and also we were asked to include hashtag youth number 4 disarmament. Yeah, and that was also shared. And then also what I'm going to do is we're going to email Youth for Disarmament 3 things that our organization does with and for youth. And we're going to include a photo of youth in action youth photos. We're going to be...
What exactly is an action youth photo?
In my mind, it's a picture of Zoom, and we're gonna be doing stuff. So maybe like a still frame of like one of the dialogue groups, or like the billions of meetings that we have. I really enjoyed our dialogue group today. Like that was really good.
That was
It was cool. Short. It was sweet. It was like on point. Everybody had great things to say. So I might do that. So yeah. So that's basically what's going on. But it is International Youth Day. And it's very exciting because I don't know if it's just because like this is my focus and everything, and you know our organization is all about youth and like putting them at the front of everything. But there's just so many opportunities right now. Everyone's like, oh man, we need youth, and we need youth from the global south, and it's like that's absolutely correct. Please give them the world. They are ready. So yeah. That's kind of what's going on, and with like that stuff today. So hashtag Twitter Marks, check it out on the Twitter machine.
Very cool.
Yeah. So with that being said, I don't know. Did you want to share any kind of reflections about the stuff that we saw earlier today? Either you know what we were talking about in the discussion group meeting, or the webinar, which I thought was really good.
First off, we can just give a quick summary of the webinar that we were at earlier today. It's basically about international Islamophobia, and kind of just showing the ways that different regions around the world experience Islamophobia, and trying to combat negative narratives about Islam around the world, which was really interesting, and a lot of different perspectives that, in the West, we're certainly not exposed to very often. And I think it's always good to try to break down the idea of anything as a monolith. And that was one of my big takeaways. It's just like nothing is a monolith, and trying to fight against the instinct to make a monolith out of anything.
Yeah, it is so difficult because, you know, we talked about this in the discussion meeting, but like as things are so layered and people are complicated, like, and the human brain is incredibly complicated, you know, and there's so much that we don't know about how we perceive certain things. And like, you know, we know that words become actions, you know, but it's really amazing to kind of just see, like, as this organism that exists on the planet, like how we're kind of doing the same thing in a lot of different places, in a lot of different contexts. But then of course, you know, that's a big one, is we're trying to do pattern matching at the expense of ignoring people's humanity.
Right. One of the really interesting discussions was like the kind of back and forth about like Sharia. Is that the way to pronounce it?
Sharia?
Yeah, the back and forth about...
That's what we say in America.
Sharia, and like the what's the word? Like the religious study of, you know, its place in Islam. To be honest, I got a little lost in like the minutia there, but what was your take on that?
I think like I was like trying to keep up with the chat at that moment when I forget who it was that brought it up, but the second she said like Sharia, I was like, uh-oh. All of my alarm bells went off. I was doing
Mm-mm.
pattern matching as well,
Right,
where
right,
I was
right.
like, I've had to have this argument so like, not even argument, right? But
Mm.
just like Sharia is like the buzzword that I
Mm-hmm.
think comes up a lot in the US when it comes to analyzing and deciding like what to think and like what to say
Mm.
and how to brand like Islam in general.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so interesting to kind of, that's like where I was coming from because I was
Right.
like, like
Mm-mm.
exclamation mark above my head. I was like, oh, so we're talking about Sharia. And then I think I don't know. I think like everything it was a great meeting. Like
Mm.
it was totally fine. But I think that was like a point where we were kind of like, let's not,
Mm.
but what did you think?
I I don't know. I just thought it was very interesting to see that that discussion back and forth. Because basically, the the scholar was talking about, from my impression, he was talking about the ways in which you can interpret the text in so many different ways, and you can read it nonviolently, um, and that like the Sharia isn't like the end all be all of interpretation of Islamic text, right? But then there's a woman from the audience, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
She she spoke and she was like, oh, but she talked about how important Sharia was to her and to her community, and it's just interesting because you see that, like, you can think of the same kinds of discussion happening like within Christianity, for example, where I mean, obviously you can talk about, like, for example, like LGBTQ or like abortion rights and how people have these very different visceral meanings that they take out of the text. Um, I mean, of course, if we were talking about like religious law, right, and you look back at like the Old Testament, for example, and like stuff where it's like, oh yeah, you can't wear clothes that have mixed types of fabric, things like that are just no one follows. Like, no one takes an entire religious text as gospel. Well, that's not true. There are very few people who take the entire religious text as the most essential thing that you have to do, and it's just interesting to think about it that way.
Yeah, I shared this in the discussion group, but I'll do it again here. Just kind of like the way that I kind of navigated myself out of Christianity, and then like I was atheist,
Mm.
and I still consider myself like I thankfully like I practice Buddhism, and the Buddhism that I practice doesn't have like any deities in it, so it's like I
Mm-mm.
guess I'm atheist, but I'm Buddhist,
Mm.
because I like do a thing and like but yeah, and it's been really interesting to kind of like just like kind of swim in the ambiguity of like what people think is happening in religion,
Mm.
because everyone is having their own personal experience with like what they think that they do.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I think this may be a point of introduction to like a conversation with my dad too, because I'm kind of one of the things that I'm really interested in doing is kind of finding out like where does his personal philosophy like really sit with his actions,
Mm.
and like what, because I know that, so for instance, like my dad would definitely consider himself like he's very upset about abortion and
Mm.
he's very much pro life, right?
Mm.
And I think I want to try to talk to him about that from a place like I've tried to do it once before years ago and it did
Mm.
not go well because I
Mm.
exploded. I just simultaneously combusted.
Right,
And
right.
I think that I can, the way that I'm kind of trying to figure it out is I'm going to try to talk to him about like, because I consider myself pro-life because I'm very much his child, and
Mm-hmm.
I like grew
Mm-hmm.
up like, around my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way that I like navigated to like being pro-choice, essentially, like I got information that I didn't know before, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't realize that it's actually there's an entire legal argument, and then you can be against like abortion as a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but not be in favor of the government enforcing that.
Mm.
And then that would make you pro-choice. So like
Mm-hmm.
you can be a pro-choice person who's like not in favor of abortion.
Right.
So yeah, so having like added complexity and trying to be like you don't have to necessarily, it's not that you're abandoning like something that you believe in. You're actually taking what you believe in and then matching that philosophy with your actions,
Mm-hmm.
so you can be for like limited government
Right.
and against abortion and then vote for pro-choice things because
Mm-hmm.
that might, that would like be a part of those two things. So it's not like you're switching teams, you're actually like acting out your philosophy. So, but that's if he, believes in limited government, which I think he does. But like, also, what does limited government mean too? Because he's also had this whole thing today about socialism, and I'm like, okay, well, I happen to know that you like this policy and like this thing and blah blah
Right.
blah. And also, how if you're, and he identifies as Christian,
Mm.
and so like so much of Christianity, the way that a lot of Christians interpret their, faith is, especially like the thing that I always think about is the homeless, right? And
Mm.
I've seen my
Mm.
dad. I shouldn't like complain about like I'm not complaining about it, but like
Right.
but I hate to put him on the spot because he's not here. But for instance, like he's complained about like public housing, and I've
Mm-hmm.
never understood that.
Right.
Because it's like, but you're Christian, and that was
Mm.
kind of like my experience as a Christian in Louisiana in general, where I was like, I don't understand why. Like, aren't we Christian? Like, this doesn't
Right.
sound very Christian. And like, my
Right.
religion was such an important aspect of how I was navigating the world. And I think that's a big part of the reason why, like, I stopped practicing it, because I couldn't really see like how it was.
Reconcile the.
Yeah, especially as somebody who, like, I'm really curious and I'm really interested in just like how we like govern ourselves, and I
Right.
really believe in self-governance, and I'm really excited about it, and like consent and in governance.
Mm-mm.
And I want to be a part of it, and like be a part of like my community, and like do my best.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been such a strange like journey, because I think a lot of people in like a lot of different contexts and religions kind of look around at like their community and their actions, and they're like, this doesn't fit up, and I don't know how to talk about it.
Mm-mm.
So I think that we end up kind of doing what we're going to do, what we want to do anyway,
Mm.
despite if there's like an overall, like, no, we definitely believe this, like, you don't eat shrimp. It's like, yeah, but like, I'm from New Orleans.
Right. Right.
We're
Right.
going to eat shrimp. Like, so yeah.
That's so interesting. I mean, like one of the things I always think of is actually here's a kind of interesting story. I was at a protest in Stanford over the weekend for this guy named Stephen Barrier, who I think 9 months ago, 2019, he was having a mental health crisis. Police were called. He ran away from them, and they like ran after him, grabbed him, and like really manhandled him.
Mm-hmm.
And he stopped breathing. And they, when he got back to the police station, he didn't have a pulse, but they threw him in a jail cell. They thought he was pretending to be dead, apparently, but he was actually dead. And like, there's video of like police officers like picking him up and like saying, "Oh, like this guy deserves an Oscar," because like they anyway. That's Stephen Barrier. He was killed in Stanford, which is the city near me. So I was at a protest against police brutality for that. But afterwards, when we were leaving, we got handed this little pamphlet by, I don't know, just like some people on the street, and it was the craziest pamphlet I've ever seen. Like, basically, it was called like The Poor Revolutionist. I have it somewhere, but and it was like this little comic book, like about this big with a bunch of pages that talked.
It's like a zine.
Yeah, I guess so. And it was like the story of like these left wing revolutionaries, and like it starts with like this guy who's a revolutionary, but he hates his brother, and because his brother is a Christian, and it's like the leftists, they hate the Christians, so they kick him out, and they yell at him about how he's a bad dude for being Christian. And then they have this whole revolution where they kill all the cops, and they kill anyone who owns a car, because a car is a form of property, and so therefore they're capitalists. And at the end, like I don't know this for sure, but I feel like there was like an anti-Semitic thing going on, because like there was this one dude who only showed up one or two times. He showed up at the beginning to tell everyone to do a revolution. Then after the revolution, he shows up and it's like, I actually used you guys. And he and he looks a little.
I tricked you into feeling things.
Yeah, and then he like executes the revolutionaries, because he's like, I used you because I needed someone to do a revolution so that I could be in charge, but now you might revolt against me, so you're all going to get executed. Anyway, like the thing was crazy. But basically, what I'm thinking about is just the ways in which we interpret we can interpret religion so differently, and like what I'm just wondering, like, when when you're talking about your father, right? How do those ideas come together? You know, like in someone's head, like when they think about all these things and they try to reconcile all of those things, like you tried to do. Um, like I guess I saw the result of that in a way in that little pamphlet. I saw like if you believe all of these things simultaneously, like this is like the end result of believing all of these things that to me seem very contradictory, right? Like the idea that the leftists are anti-violent and like don't like the police, but also would institute like a brutal regime where they're like executing people who own cars, like the like that disconnect
And that's
there.
so funny. It's like these bleeding hearts are gonna kill all of us.
Right, exactly. um, but what basically one of the things that made me think of was also the quote from I believe Jesus said, which is it is it's something like it's harder for a camel to pass through the eye
The
of a
irony.
needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, right? Which is like
And then you get prosperity gospel.
right, exactly. Like it's just so obviously like an anti like a capitalist accumulation argument that is just like really blatantly there, and yet, as you
So
say,
then that goes to the kind of the comments about like Sharia law and like what it means to people, right? So
mm,
and like are things. So one of the things that the kind of Buddhism that I practice, basically like there's when I talk about like rules, or because there's no dogma and there's no
mm,
rules, right, necessarily. So it's like there's not like a 10 commandments or anything like that. But there's like kind of like one overarching rule, and also you can hear the car alarm going off in the background
yeah,
probably. So let's
that's
just
like
enjoy that. But so like so it's kind of cool because like on the one hand, it's like the loosest religion ever because there's no rules. But on the
mm,
other hand, it's like the strictest religion ever because there's only really one rule, which is do your best at all times in any
right,
situation.
right, which is
So like it's like
hard.
it's a hard and it's not impossible, right? Because well, actually, like it's so funny because when you're constantly kind of like reflecting like every morning, every night, like these are my goals, like this is what I wanted to do, this is the kind of person that I want to be, the thing
Mm,
that I really want to transform about myself, about like my family, about like wherever. Did I do it? And then the thing about it is, if you're doing that, then your best is not necessarily going to be somebody else's best,
mm,
and you can
mm,
kind of like realize that I am doing my best. And even if it's not that great, I just have a lot of stuff to work on. And like
right.
I'll get to it and I believe in myself. And like, it's a whole life. And it's not getting like patience with stuff. I feel like I've had such a big difficulty like going from, you know, just having to do with like the patience of I don't know what I'm doing,
Mm, mm,
and I will figure it out a little bit every day, and I will
right.
become like the person that I want to be, like a little bit every day, and it's
Mm,
like it's forever, and like it'll never stop.
right. That's so
But
cool.
yeah, so you know, I have heard it said when I was in my like before Buddhist times, when I was thinking about a lot of like dogmatic stuff and like rules and commandments and things, that it has been said by some scholars that the Bible like is really cool because it says everything both like one way and the other. So
Mm-hmm.
like there's like you can kind of map out like where it says, oh, because you can justify pretty much anything is basically the
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
argument. Like you can use the Bible to kind of like justify different things.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so I think that's probably true for like a lot of texts because
Mm,
I mean, I think I personally think that like people create religions, and
mm,
so they put their perspectives like into a kind of form that they can share with people in this way, and it's
mm,
a way that we kind of express our humanity, and like humans are sometimes like really desiring of like tight structures, and like
mm,
they want to like feel secure, and they create like these walls or whatever, and then sometimes humans like they want to like feel better about maybe like having more than other people, or like
mm,
maybe sometimes they like understand that they should be altruistic, and so like, oh, let's like really care about that.
mm,
So I'm not surprised from that perspective that it's going to be a little bit complicated because
mm.
people are complicated, you know.
Right. No, that makes
um
sense. Hmm.
but yeah, so like you can say that's how somebody kind of squares the circle with of
Mm,
like, even though Jesus is like very much for poor people, since I already kind of like my in my moral foundation framework,
Mm.
in moral psychology, I am very interested in, like, I love the flavor of, like, you know, dignity for poor people. So I'm going to be drawn
Mm.
to that part of the
Mm.
Bible.
Mm.
Whereas if somebody is like DJT and he's like, I just, I'm all about, like, I have all this inherited wealth and, like, I'm
Mm.
apparently, born into a different class situation than other people. So I'm going to be really attracted to the parts of the Bible that say, like, I'm supposed to be,
Right.
inheritor of great wealth.
Mm. Mm.
And
Mm.
yeah. And I grew up with that too. I mean, there's like a lot of people. I remember there were like people in like Folsom, Louisiana that have like these huge houses, and like my grandmother would always be like, "Oh, their money is blessed," And it's like, "Oh,
Hmm.
okay, cool. I wish my money was blessed." It's like, "Oh, okay, well maybe one day it will be."
Oh wow, that's a very interesting phrase. What like
Dude, and
what is
oh,
it?
go ahead.
Well, like what from your perspective? What does it mean exactly? Is it kind of like a they is it like just literally prosperity gospel? Like if you are rich, that means you are like chosen in some way.
I think that I could be wrong, and I can't ask my grandmother because she died of cancer like everybody else in Louisiana.
Mm.
But
I'm sorry.
I do. Yeah, it's okay. Sorry, I that was my terrible joke about just bringing awareness to like cancer in Louisiana.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so I I think what it means is that there are rich people that are not, their money is not blessed, but
Hmm.
like the rich people that like we know, I think,
The
and like
ones we like.
yeah, their money is like a divine, like an expression of like God's favorability with them.
Hmm.
So they
That's
are
interesting.
prosperous because like they have earned God's favor.
Uh
Like
huh.
God likes them.
But
Because
that.
like God does have favorites in the Bible. He's like,
Mm.
God really liked this guy,
Right.
Like
Right.
that is in
Right.
the Bible a lot.
So, do you think that there's like an internal reasoning for that? Like, if you ask someone, would they say, "Oh, like," do you think that they would be like, "Oh, you do X, Y, Z, and that means your money is blessed," or would it just be like kind of more informal?
Yeah, I think is it by acts or by like, yeah, I think so. I think it's
Mm.
like their family has done a lot of things
Okay.
for God for so long that like God is
Interesting.
paying them back. I
Right. Right.
think.
Right. Huh. I.
Yeah. Anyway, oh, the only thing I was gonna say is that I met like my partner is from England, and he was always kind of like, I feel like there's like a lot of anti um like Islamic sentiment in England.
Mm. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say. And yeah, that was one of the things where, whenever I was like kind of like, okay, cool, I don't think I'm Christian anymore. That was always like my argument where I'm like, you don't really, I don't know if you like really know the context of like just how crazy interpretations of Christianity can be. Like
Mm.
I know a lot of like that's like on the comments. Like we got snakes, we got I don't know, like just shenanigans. And that
Mm.
has a lot
Mm.
to do with like different like movements within America. And I
Mm.
didn't realize this. I mean, not to, I don't want to throw Mormons under the bus. And I really want to, I really seriously do want to
Mm.
respect like everybody, like I know faith is really personal. It has to do with like your
Mm.
family and
Mm.
everything.
Mm.
So like, it's not, I hope I can like talk about it, and I don't want to
Mm.
like offend anybody. That being said, so whatever. Anyway, I just found out, I didn't realize that like so much of, like I guess Mormonism. I don't know. How to say that correctly? I guess Mormonism. But is like really connected to like the founding fathers, like being like
Hmm.
so connected to God.
Oh,
And
interesting.
the I think it's like the Constitution is like kind of viewed as a religious document,
Oh,
and it's a
wow.
very like American religion in terms of like it's very like it like kind of worships like America.
Oh,
Um,
I didn't know that.
so that's going to affect so much of how you navigate politics
Right.
and your identity and like international affairs.
Mm.
So I mean that's just really
Huh.
fascinating. And I only found that out because there's this representative, and she was giving a talk, and she had said some really bad stuff. And I can't even remember what it was. I
Mm.
can't remember if it was like racist or sexist or see all of the above. But
Mm.
I had done like a little bit of research on like what she was saying, and there was like some language that stood out to me that was really, I'd never really heard in like
Mm.
that pattern before. And then when I Googled it, like there was like all this whole like, long academic research on just like how people, navigate their Mormonism and and having that context for it. And I had no idea. So there's like a bajillion interpretations of Christianity that are very much not Anglican, and so like to talk to somebody who's like thinks that Christianity is like the Anglican expression, I'm like, no, you guys are like, that's a very specific thing, and there's like there's a bunch of crazy other stuff that's like doesn't have anything to do with the Church of England.
Right. Yeah, I wanna second what you said earlier, which is just that like, faith is very personal to people, and like religion is a very complicated topic. People obviously people are entitled to their beliefs, and definitely don't want to like be dunking on people or make them feel bad for like things that they think. I mean, unless those things are like actively harmful to people, which some of them are. I'm just reminded of I don't know if you heard about this. In South America, one of the tribes of people who is like just completely disconnected from anything. Like they have no connection with like the modern world, right? They're still living as if it was like 2,000 years ago. And there's a couple tribes like that I think it's mostly in South America. I don't know if they're on other continents, but anyway, a group of missionaries has gone, and they're, I think, yesterday.
Like a group of mercenaries.
Yeah, no. Yesterday or the day before, they announced that they'd been like missionarying for like 6 months, and we're gonna now like introduce them to the Bible down there. And just, I don't know, that made me pretty upset. Just the fact that they're still doing like the cultural imperialism. I understand that it's, part of certain tenets of the faith that, you need to go and preach it to every community, I believe, in order to bring about the rapture, which...
That's the worst one. That was the number one reason why I'm not Christian anymore. Because like it's like, and then everyone died. The end. I'm just like, okay, this isn't useful for me.
Yeah.
Like I can't do any good with this, because then I'm just like sitting around waiting around for like everybody to get their comeuppance and go to hell forever. When like, no, I believe in people. I want to have something where I can like believe in people, not just like convert or be tortured for all of eternity.
Yeah.
So
it's that part's kind of concerning for me as well. But yeah, no, it's just very interesting to see that even now, even as people are trying to become more conscientious around the world, like there's still like the people who are out there like really like doing like this very, very, in some ways, destructive thing. I mean, if you come in with your own ideas to this society that's been getting along fine for thousands of years by themselves, and you try to convert them to your personal belief system, I don't know.
So I have so much to say about this because it's a hot topic in humanitarian work, and I had to write a paper that was like kind of tangential about like mission work in, I don't know, where was it? I think I ended up sending it around Uganda because it was for an LGBT rights class, and they have some interesting laws. So yeah, okay, so here's basically the thing, especially about like for groups of people that like are thought of as like not being like connected to civilization or whatever, because like you can basically be wrong on both sides. Because like on the one hand, and I think they were talking about this like National Geographic, right? On the one hand, there's like, you're kind of like not fetishizing necessarily, but like you're basically saying like, oh, they should be preserved because it's like, so like why shouldn't they have access to like other things because you feel like they are like cool and interesting and like take pictures from National Geographic, and there's like that criticism,
right,
where it's like, well, they're just people, so like treat that, it's fine for them to like interact with things and they don't need to be whatever. And then there's the other way that you can be wrong, which is that you're like I think it's kind of like what you're saying, right, where it's like you shouldn't try to connect with them because they're already civilized, and like they don't need like your like modern like shenanigans of like interventions. So there's like I think this is the pro-intervention side and then the anti-intervention side. And the answer, I think, is like, let's ask them. I don't know, see
Right.
how they feel. um, but yeah, because it's a big like, especially with like development work and just like NGOs, like we gotta,
Mm.
talk about like how we interact with people and like
Mm.
what we're doing. Because I mean, like that's faith groups, that's like lots of international aid groups where we don't really take into consideration what the consequences are of like interacting with people. And so maybe let's just all just try to do that like more intentionally. And I
Right.
think that, yeah, but yeah, and then people are generally very critical in the development world of like faith groups and faith-based organizations coming in and like doing mission work in general.
Mm.
Um, so that's also a thing because people, and a friend of mine, she went and did mission work with her church. Oh, our church. I was at the church for a while. I was at a lot of churches when I was younger.
Mm.
But yeah, so it's like I know that that's a thing that people do. Like when
Mm.
they're like 13, they like put you on a plane and then like have you
Mm.
build a house because like as a 13-year-old girl, I guess you're like a great house building expert. That needs to go. But
I
then
hope
there's
those
idea.
houses end up being okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was teaching English actually, and then she did it
Mm.
like later in life too.
Mm.
Which I mean, I honestly like. I think that international exchange is like the heart of like building like a beautiful
Mm.
international community and
Mm.
society, and like so I think there is value in that 100%.
Mm.
So maybe there's ways that like everybody can just do their best and like try to communicate value as best they can.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, and I also very firmly believe in like the idea of like fighting where you are, right?
Mm.
So maybe you also don't need to necessarily go visit like another group of people. Maybe if there's other people that live there,
Right.
and like they have some kind of relationship, they can just kind of like share certain things that they think, and like that can be like a more organic and respectful way of doing that, rather than being like, I'm going to target this group of people. Like, well, what about like your own neighborhood?
Mm.
Like
Mm.
how is that doing? Are you done in your neighborhood? What
Right.
about your country? Maybe you can contribute, to like where you are geographically first, or not
Mm.
first, but I don't know, do your best in both areas. And not the only thing is like, please don't try to avoid like, I guess like doing your best with your religious practice at home if you're
Mm.
going to
Mm.
also do internationally. And I think
Right.
it's up to them. So
No, I think what you said makes a lot of sense. That you should just ask them what they want. Um,
yeah,
and I doubt that's being done most of the time.
because I think it just like in my own understanding, and this is totally different, right? But like if I'm trying to think about like rural people and like how connected they want to be to like not rural areas,
Mm.
like the rural people that I know are very happy with being in rural areas
Mm.
and like not connected to like a larger international movement.
Mm.
So, but then maybe their kids aren't. So like maybe it's like a whole thing, but it'll be up to them. It'll be their decision.
Right. 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 No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I took a class on the politics of development while I was studying abroad in South Africa, um, and that was really interesting. There was a lot of talk about that. It spoke a lot about like white feminism, and or not white feminism, but basically white women doing development work. Um,
Mm.
and the
Boy, do we do development work. Like all my classes are like, hello, everyone. Welcome to the White Women with Large Glasses convention.
mm,
Yeah.
it was very critical of it, in
Mm.
terms of just like the ways in which, firstly, development work is construed of as like a feminine practice in that it's,
Mm.
it's like helping people is inherently like a feminine, uh, coded thing. And then also the ways in which like it's the ways in which it's fundamentally racist in some ways to conceive of going to other places and helping out being like more morally good than helping out where you are, because it's coded in like, oh, like other places are worse off than here, they're doing worse, it is more noble, it's a dangerous place, it is more noble for me to go put myself at risk in this dangerous place to help these very disadvantaged people. And just kind of like all the ways that ethics gets tangled up. Um, that course was very interesting. I don't really I don't know if I have like
I
a synthesis there.
So to bring it back to religion, I was just so the first thing that you said is like so fascinating about women being in development. And I was just thinking like, oh, that makes sense because, service in general, like, well, women are here to serve like people, because like that's
Right.
like, oh, this is our role. Like we do all this kind of work or whatever. So that makes sense that would be the larger perception overall of like, well, I mean, if you're going to help people, you're probably a woman because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to help me. This book came out and I just saw it in the New York Times newsletter. And it was like unpacking like male privilege and like the things that like men expect to have. And I was like, oh man, I don't really ever think about that. I gotta like read the article about this book because I don't have time to read this book. But
Did you read the article or was it just the title?
I have it pulled up. It is on my Chrome tabs, and I will read it sometime today-ish.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we'll talk about male privilege, I guess.
Something interesting, I guess, on that same topic. My dad is like a chef at a restaurant, generally where those are. And he was talking the other day about how really really sexist at least all of the restaurant industry he's been in is, in terms of just like,
oh my gosh,
like not respecting the like agency of women who are sous chefs or like want to become chefs or anything like that. And I don't know, it was just very very sad to see. I guess, I mean, a lot of it has to do with the fact that like those jobs are like so underpaid, and I don't know, I guess the cultural shift towards like more equality hasn't necessarily happened in like lower income brackets the same way as it has with like liberal middle class people. Yeah.
Yep. Like that was the craziest thing. So my family owns a restaurant, and it's like a small operation. It's a family restaurant. But then I waited tables there for a long time, and then like I ended up like going out like outside of that, and I was like still waiting tables like at a different restaurant. So like I've worked in restaurants my whole life, and and then after that, so I got my undergrad, and I was working in an office, and it was my first office job, and I was just like blown away by all of the rights. I was like, what? Like I can just tell you I don't feel well? Like how? Does everyone know about this? Because you have to there's no sick days, there's no so and that's like my experience is totally different, right? Because I'm coming from like my family like owning a restaurant and like having like even better understanding of that. But then just like I don't know, it's really amazing the kinds of things that you can do like at a middle class job versus like you have there's no patience, there's no acknowledgement of your like worth as a human being in like working class jobs in general. And so like my first like middle class job was like, wow, like I'm allowed to like do my job. That's another thing too. Like you're just expected to deal with so much extra stuff and like work for free, and there's so much like wage theft. And they like and it's bad because like they also treat like the middle management like very badly as well, and like they're put in these situations where they like basically like take it out on like everyone that works for them,
right?
And it's just like stressful. I mean, I've been asked, and I also worked retail. Yeah, I mean, and you like I've had to work for free at like different organizations, and I've not gotten paid for my labor,
right?
Not to mention like there's no health insurance. They do the hours so that you can't make enough money to live off of. So you have to have like 2 of these jobs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, like we don't have like get the ILO in Louisiana like right now.
The ILO.
Yeah, International Labor Organization. Yeah.
I mean, the U.S. has the worst like job rights, workers' protections in like the entire developed world. We also, I heard this the other day. You know how like Japan is famously known for being like the most overworked country.
Oh my gosh, it's not as bad as us, is it? They work less than us.
No, we work 173 hours a year more on average than the average Japanese worker, and they have way more protections. We're also the only like industrialized country that doesn't have mandatory childcare leave for the father.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And you don't get like, I think I think you can't be fired, but it just depends, right? Like
Mm,
Louisiana is a right to work state, so like we don't
mm,
really have any kind of organizing.
right.
Um, yeah, yeah. I think I'm pretty sure like you just are expected to like work. You like pop out that baby, and they're like, great. So when are you coming back in? Like there's
Mm,
just
mm.
and like
Yep.
at a job where like you have to like walk around like you know.
It's, I mean, it's all, I mean, it's all connected, right? Like the exploitation of like minorities and women, um, like all of that is premised on the ability of just people to be exploited under the system itself. Like that enables
Yeah,
that exploitation. Like, not to like be a class
and that's a
reductionist, but
no, that's an excellent observation and note, and especially when we think about designing like how systems work and like how to
mm,
criticize them and like see if they're not working is kind of
mm,
like, all right, so what aspects of being human are certain people expected to just like not have,
right,
because like you still have to live your life, and that's
mm,
important. And what's frustrating is I think that we generally like we devalue like what you can produce socially
mm,
versus like what you can produce like monetarily, and like we
mm,
really reduce people in a way that is like not additive at all.
mm,
I mean,
mm,
I think I was reading something the other day, and you can see this is like the most obvious statement in the world, but just like the kind of harassment that Black people have to like deal with on a daily
mm.
basis, going to and from work and like all aspects of society. It's bad for business, you know.
Right.
Like, what's the monetary loss? Like the patent loss, because we're just
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I'm just like not gonna do business or whatever. It's like, what? Why do you hate money? It's
True. I mean,
like,
like, if we were organizing society in the way that, like, in order to like produce the most stuff, like, we obviously, like, racism wouldn't exist. Like, the everyone would be provided a home. Everyone would be provided food. Everyone would
I
be
do think
provided
racism would still
water.
exist, but I think
Well,
racism exists in like a variety of like it sits in your body and like in society in different places.
right. But like, if we're talking about a society that was like optimally organized for producing the most stuff, which I don't think is like even a good way to organize society, but that's what capitalism claims to do. But in
Mm-hmm.
reality,
Connecting
as
it to our conversation about religion and dogma and
mm,
commandments and like how you organize like how you think things should be.
right, no, exactly. Like, we claim that capitalism is the best system for producing things, but clearly someone's going to be more productive if they get a better education. If our goal was to make the most productive society possible,
Oh my god,
we would
coronavirus.
we would invest all of our money in transportation, for like mass transportation. We would invest our money in fighting climate change. We'd invest our money in schools. Like, there's but that's not what we do, because that's not what our society is about. Our society is about uplifting a certain select group of people who are already wealthy.
Yeah, so there's I was just reading this article in my little Buddhist newspaper last night with my friends, and it was like it's like how to become architects of like a new society, right? Or like a
Mm,
better society or something like that.
mm,
And one of the things they were saying, like that everything that's bad, right,
mm,
stems from like there's this principle that's like everything that's bad that people do stems from greed,
mm,
anger, and foolishness.
mm,
um and focusing on like paying attention to like how like you exhibit like greed, anger, and foolishness like in
mm,
your community, at your job, like with your family,
mm,
like that's how you can kind of construct like a better society.
mm,
And then just not trying to like, because even now I'm for the first time really starting to think about like capitalism and like socialism, since my dad brought it up. So
mm.
he started me on this karmic journey. So I'm like, okay, well, if you're against socialism, I'm going to find out what I think. I don't know.
Mhm.
Let me think. What is socialism?
Right, right.
It's a hot topic these days.
It
So
is.
I'm this is for the first time. So the same way that I was kind of describing about how like my dad needs to decide what he thinks first, and
Mm,
then like find out like how to express that politically.
mm, mm,
I'm gonna try to find out like what I think first, and then I'm gonna try to express myself through like whatever that means politically.
mm, mm,
And like that way I can not feel like I'm like swayed by like different branding or whatever. I'm like,
mm,
oh no, this
mm,
isn't popular, because I think right now like I am just so afraid of like criticizing capitalism at all ever,
mm,
especially considering that it's such a like it's in my head, right? It's
mm,
connected to like family,
Mm,
country,
mm,
like the pattern matching, right?
mm.
So it's so hard because I still have to kind of and like move around like how my brain has decided what that word means
Right,
and be
right.
like, hey, well, what does it actually mean? What do I
Mm,
actually think? And
mm,
then and like if I end up with like I think that these are the aspects of capitalism that I'm like really like 100% solid on, right? From
mm.
that like solid foundation, I'll be able to like, express that and then without like trying to worry about like, oh, what are other people going to think? Or like, I don't know, I don't want to commit to anything. I'll just be like, well, this is
Mm,
what I think. Hey, I like this. I like this.
mm,
This is it. Maybe I'm over here more. And for these specific reasons, here are
mm.
my intellectual receipts. Yeah.
I mean, I
But yeah.
think everyone could absolutely like, no matter what your beliefs are, everyone could benefit from really doing that work. And it's hard work to sit down and like really think through and try to like form an internally consistent framework to understand your life in the world. Um, but I mean, most people don't have time, and honestly,
Yeah.
like they have the intellectual curiosity beaten out of them by bad schools and dogma and all kinds of things like that. That just,
Yeah.
you know.
Violently,
Yeah,
like
no,
I
absolutely. Because I think people like I believe that humans are inherently born with like a natural curiosity and want to care for each other and all of this. And to the extent in which that doesn't get expressed later in life, I think that a lot of that has to do with just structures making it harder for people to connect with that part of themselves.
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a kind of a fear because I mean that's how shame works, right? So like
Mm,
basically you receive shame from other people for doing certain things,
mm,
and it alerts your body to know that like you will lose social connection if
mm,
you continue this behavior, and so
right.
you're like, oh, I need to not do that behavior again.
Mm,
And so depending on like because it's very real. Like I mean the the things that I have like the ways that I've changed my mind have definitely disconnected me from my family,
right.
But it is, but a part of like the way that I've changed my mind, especially when it comes to like ownership of like what I'm capable of and like what I
Mm,
think I can do, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm trying to build like a lot of like faith in myself that even if I think differently from my parents, I will be able to have a connection with them because like we are
mm,
family. But that's like a whole process and I definitely am not there every day and definitely like haven't been there in the past, so like that's my
right.
goal for the future. um but yeah, sorry, I talked a lot.
No, it's okay. That's a very noble endeavor and something that I want to try to do as well. Uh,
We can do it, we can do it, believe in yourself.
exactly. I think we're almost out of time.
That
Um,
was unexpected. I thought we were gonna have a short thing, but then I also kind of thought I'm probably gonna talk to Aidan too much because like that's how we do.
uh, well, I mean, it's been a very, very cool discussion. I don't know. It moved around a lot, but I think we're getting it like kind of just like why do people believe the things they do, um, which I think is a really interesting question. And if you sit down and you and like interrogate, like you ask like fundamental questions like what should society be for, right? And everyone has their own answer to that, but
Mm.
then kind of like building off of that and trying to extrapolate out from like your basic questions to like a superstructure. I think that's like really worthwhile and really hard, but I wish more people would do it.
All right, cool. So Aidan, we solved religion, we solved politics, we got family, we're good. We solved all the world's problems.
Yeah.
Youth leading the way. Um, yeah. All right, cool. This has been very good. Thanks so much. I know what she says. This is great. This is
Yeah.
fun. It's 2 o'clock. We did it. We got the intro all set out.
Yes, we did.
Cool. All right. So yes. There's no more business. I guess I just wanted to plug, the hash Twitter March. Check it out on Twitter. Yeah, that's everything. Happy International Youth Day.
Yes, indeed. It was wonderful talking to you.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.